Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm so grateful that you're here and that you're a part of this recovery community. Today we're diving into great lessons that I personally learned going through anxiety recovery from mentors of mine, teachers of mine who, just blew my frame of reference wide open to, because of their great knowledge and their wisdom and their experience dealing with the unknown, dealing with the tragedies of existence, because life is tragic. How do we operate in that frame, that the unknown frame of existence? Because we definitely live in an age currently that is way far safer and with far more resources than ever before in human history, but yet we're more depressed, we're more anxious, and we're more metabolically unhealthy than ever before. What is going on? We need these lessons in our lives. You need these lessons right now more than ever, because are you happy or unhappy? Are you feeling unfulfilled? Are you feeling stagnant? Are you floundering about in your life? This video is for you. The first lesson I want to dive into today is from Dr. Jordan Peterson. He says, it's very simple, but also we have to think about this for a long time. Do it badly. Do it badly. If you have a vision of where you want to go in your life, you have to stumble towards that vision, and you have to be aware that you're going to do it badly before you become a master at it. You have to become the fool first before you can master it. Now, you need goals for positive emotion. You have to see yourself progressing towards some sort of vision and aim in order to feel good, in order for that positive emotion to come about. If you are floundering, there is no positive emotion, because you are in this mediated state between goals. You don't have a goal. There's nothing there. You want things to get better, but then for me, I was grabbing onto external means to feel good, but they were short term rather than long term, and I never really felt good. I felt satisfied, and my dopaminergic system was feeling pretty good, but I actually got worse, because the more stagnant you are, the worse it becomes as time progresses. It's like Captain Hook, right? The time is chasing him in the crocodile, right? The crocodile is the predatory animal that chases us. We want to run from that thing instead of fighting it, and so you ignore the crocodile. But then also the crocodile has a clock in its stomach, which also symbolizes that time is scary. Time is, the older you get and the more you flounder about in your life, the more scarier time becomes for you, because you don't want to come to the realization that you've been in this unconscious stupor for decades of your life and you squandered potential. Really, that's a scary thing. And a lot of people don't want to come to that realization. But you have to give yourself permission to attempt a goal imperfectly. And that's how you get somewhere in your life. If you start a new job, expect that you're just going to be bad at it. It's very humbling. And David Goggins talks about that all the time in his books and on his podcast. He says that going into a new position, starting from day one, it's very humbling, because you start from scratch. You start from rock bottom. If you can master rock bottom, if you are comfortable in those failures, then you have a leg up on everyone else, because then you're going to attempt more things in your life if you embrace the square one mentality, if you embrace failure. You're comfortable and you're willing to accept it, that it's part of this growing process. I had a hard time completing a book or starting a program or starting a new job because of this internal notion that I'm going to be a fool at it, I'm going to embarrass myself, I'm not going to retain the information. If I don't understand this podcast right away, it's not for me and I should just drop it. But that's not necessarily true, because then I started to understand through my recovery that if I only retain 5% of this podcast, that's way better than not listening to the podcast or the audiobook or doing the program at all. It's way better for you. That is one of the biggest things I learned. Even if you're having a hard time retaining this information in this video, because maybe your anxiety system is on and it's harder to retain information, if you take 1% or 2% of this wisdom, then that's so much better than not doing it and then going back to the cat videos or the nonsense other videos that you particularly watch. It's way better. You have to stumble forward and trust in your unconscious mind that it's absorbing the information. If you're subjecting yourself to wisdom and knowledge that's outside of what you're familiar with, then your unconscious is going to absorb the energy of the people you're listening to. It's also going to absorb the information, and the more you subject yourself to it, even if you're having a hard time retaining it, the more you're going to understand it in the long term. The next piece of wisdom I want to dive into is from David Goggins. He's another one of my mentors, and I love what he has to say about going to war with your mind. He says, going to war with yourself is necessary to create a whole new identity. Whew, that's good. But let's break down identity. Identity is made up of your beliefs and your values. And the best way to shift your beliefs and values is through action. Another one of my mentors, Jean Piaget, who's a developmental psychologist, he understands that your actions are way far more sophisticated than your representations of the actions. So you act out the person you want to be. And Tony Robbins says this a lot too. You act out that person you want to be, then that's going to shift in your beliefs and values. Because when I started to subject myself to great mentors and role models in my life, my values started to shift, and my unconscious mind said, hey, this is what Brad values, because he's doing this consistently on a day-to-day basis. That's huge. James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, he says that every micro action you take is an internal vote of the person you want to become. So be careful of what you act out, because it could be a tragedy, or it could be the best thing for you. But pay attention to the outcomes, right? Pay attention to your feelings. Pay attention to the effects it's having on you. Now, the unconscious mind wants to stay with what's familiar. Understandably so, because with what's familiar, it's easy. Your body's running automatically, and you're burning up less resources and energy to do those actions because it's so habitual. But when you start to act out a new identity, what happens? Your unconscious mind goes, whoa, I got to use up more energy. I got to use up more resources. Hey, what the heck is going on here, man? Let's go back to the way things were. Let's go back to the tyranny. It's like, well, no, that's not where I want to be. So always having a vision and aim for you, and that's why I recommend the Anxiety Project program. My program is that in part of that program, I help you develop a vision and a goal. How do you get to that goal? What do you need to do to get to that goal? Like, what does your life look like 3 months down the road? How do you want to feel, look, act? What's your family life going to be like? Having a vision, because the more you attach pain to not changing, the more you're going to want to change, right? And pleasure to change. Like, what are the benefits to changing? Like, yeah, there's some benefits there. You have to know those because you think that staying where you are is really what's good for you. But really, is it? And then I want to dive into this great passage from the Bible. Jesus says here, I could wish you cold or hot. So then, because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth. This really struck me because what this passage is saying is, because you're neither good nor evil, you're floundering about in the middle, that's actually worse for you. Well, why? Because you're actually in this desert, right? You're not cemented in evil and you're not cemented in a structure of evil. You're not cemented in a structure of good, but you're a mediator of the good and evil. You don't know who you want to be. And it's like Crabbe and Goyle from Harry Potter, right? They're not really bad people, but they're not even good people. They don't even know what they want to be. They're floundering about, indulging, getting fat off cupcakes, right? They don't know who they are. They're like the fox and the cat from Pinocchio, right? They're not really good. They don't have the intellectual capacity to be really evil, but they don't also have the moral guidance or the light beckoning towards them of the good in their life. They're just puppets of their evil master. And that's actually way worse. That's a worse place to be. It's like the desert in Moses, where Moses leads his people from the tyranny of Egypt to the promised land, but you have to go through this desert-like place before you get to the promised land, before you become good. It's like me going through recovery. I wanted to do the opposite of my old self and move from that self towards this good promised land place that my mentors were projecting onto me. But it gets worse in the middle, because then you have to build upon a whole new structure that is non-existent, and it's quite daunting. But it's better to have that vision of where you want to go and strive towards that, rather than staying in this unknown place, running in circles. That's the worst place you want to be. That's real hell right there. Obviously, being evil is real hell too, but that mediation between the two, not being really bad but not being good at all, that's a terrible place to be. It's the floundering place, right? That's a terrible place. A lot of us go through that at one point in our lives, right? Whether it's being a teenager, or then it's worse when you see people floundering in their 30s and 40s. It's like, what are you doing with your life? It's a really bad place to be. Then the last piece of wisdom I want to touch on in this video is from Carl Jung. He's a great role model of mine, because mainly for me, the shadow. He says, what you need most is found where you least want to look. Look at a health anxiety sufferer, right? They're very insecure over their health and their way of being, right? They're constantly fixated on all of their bodily sensations, their heart palpitations, the dizziness, the nausea, the body aches, pains, all of this. And I want to pick that apart, because that is really interesting. Well, their insecurities are part of their shadow, the parts of them that they don't want to confront. But when you shine a light on your insecurities and then try and master them, then the insecurities and the fear around those insecurities lessen in their strength. So for me, I viewed myself as unhealthy, and then eventually I fell back into agoraphobia. the way out of that was to master my health. So I had to adopt meditation. I had to adopt a consistent sleep and wake cycle. I had to adopt a proper human diet, which for me is low carb, animal-based diet, ketogenic diet, carnivore diet. That's what stabilizes my emotion, and it stabilizes my mental health and well-being. But not only that, though, I feel better physically. And then find a work schedule that helped bring about more balance in my life, being more in touch with nature, being more in touch with my relationship. So all of these things all contributed to the healthy identity I wanted to manifest in my life. So I had to shine a light on the things that I didn't want to acknowledge, which are my insecurities. And that's a big part of my recovery. Most people cope rather than confront what is lurking in their shadow, in the dark parts of their psyche. And a great example of this is Simba in The Lion King, because he is guided by to this pool of water by Rafiki, who is the shaman, and he looks into the pool of water, which is, as Carl Jung would say, water represents the unconscious mind, because in the water, that's where you pull up things from the depths, right? And you fish for information in there, and you can look into the unconscious mind for answers. And so he sees his outer image on the surface, that's his current self, his ego, the mask he wears. But when Rafiki says look deeper into the water, he looks past his self-image towards his potential. And what's the image of that potential? Well, it's the spirit of his father, the spirit of who you could be, the hardened self. And that's eye-opening for me. Understanding that, it blew me away, because I viewed myself as this weak, pathetic, unhealthy person. But once I saw this vision of who I could be and my potential, then I had this path to walk down. Then the last piece of wisdom I want to touch on, it's very quick. It's from James Clear. It's a simple quote, but it tells so much about who we are as people. He says, every micro action we take on a daily basis is an internal vote of the person we want to become. That's a good one. And that's where I'm going to leave you on today's video. Thank you, everybody, for being here, being a part of the community. Please leave your comments below. What piece of wisdom resonated with you the most? Is there anything that I haven't touched upon that resonates personally with you? Please share that with us, because we're all part of this community. Rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this community. Please comment below. Also, give this a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, because then you'll be the first to know whenever I release a new video.